The biggest question people have when they start thinking about becoming a Turo host is which car they should buy that's going to make them the most money. And it's probably not the Jeep Wrangler or Tesla Model 3 that a lot of people think it is. And unfortunately, there really isn't a quick blanket answer to this because it really comes down to the strategy you feel most comfortable with. In this video, I'll go through 3 steps to finding your first Turo car. First, you need to decide how much money you want to spend and what strategy you want to take using that money. One strategy that works really well is to start with cheap cash cars, which many Turo hosts call shooters. I love this strategy because buying cheap older cars means that most of the depreciation has already happened on the car, and it's pretty easy to make that investment back quickly. And if you're buying cash cars, there's obviously no interest expense. The downside of the strategy is because you're dealing with older cars, they typically do need a lot more TLC. They're also more likely to need a major repair, which you're gonna have to come out of pocket for because it's not gonna be under manufacturer's warranty. And you're gonna be losing out on rental income while that car is in the shop getting repairs or if you're doing it yourself. Another con to this strategy is their lifespan on the Turo app. If you buy a car with 100,000 plus miles on it, it's not going to be able to stay on the platform for as long as a car with 20,000 miles. So you're having to retire cars and replace your fleet more often than if you had newer cars. Despite the cons though, this is actually probably my favorite strategy because it's generally easier to make the money back that you paid for the car and grow your fleet more quickly. And especially if you know how to properly maintain cars, do the maintenance yourself, and maybe some small repairs, this is a great strategy because you can save a lot on the repair costs if you have the time. Our strategy has been to buy new-ish cars that are still under manufacturer warranty. That way, I don't have to worry about them the first year or two. The cars we buy typically have less than 30,000 miles on them, which means their lifespan on Turo will be longer and we don't have to replace cars so often, provided it doesn't get totaled before then. So yes, we are spending more money up front and maybe not making as much as we could the first year or so because you pay most of the interest at the beginning of the loan. But we tend to pay off our cars pretty quickly, so we're not carrying that loan for long. And we can rent that car out for several more years before it needs to be replaced. I also like to worry less about my cars breaking down on my guests, and we don't have time to do the repairs. When a car breaks down during a trip, it's a major inconvenience for both the guest and the host. And it really doesn't matter how well a car is cared for, they break down no matter how properly maintained they are. They just tend to break down less the newer they are. So even though we are taking more of a financial risk the first year or so, overall the strategy is working well for us. Another thing you'll notice about my fleet is we have many cars that are the same size but different brands. I like to mix up the brands because if there's a recall, I'm only down 1 car instead of 2 or 3. Plus there's a lot of brands that have a cult-like following and people who are very brand loyal who like Volkswagens, Subarus, Ford, but yet if my Volkswagen Atlas is down for some reason, I can still put that person into my Nissan Pathfinder, for example. So we like to have cars that are similar but different brands. Once you've determined how much money you want to spend and what strategy you want to take, your next step is to figure out which kind of car will work best in your market. It's also really important, especially during the first few cars that you buy, to keep in mind brand. Now, I'm no expert on cars, but we all know that certain brands have a better reputation than others. There are some brands where the parts are more expensive to buy, and that's something to take into consideration, and other brands that just last longer than others. But with that, you'll also find that the more popular brands of cars that have good reputations, like Hondas or Toyotas, there's a lot more competition for those cars on the platform for a reason. If you take a look at any market, I'm willing to bet that there's more Hondas or Toyotas than Subaru or Volkswagen. Put in the comments below why you think that is. So you're going to take the price range that you're shooting for and find cars within that price range that are going to work best for your market with the least amount of risk. If I'm going to spend $25,000 for a car, I want to pick a car that's going to get me $60 a day, not $40 a day, and require the least amount of repairs and be down for the least amount of time. So start looking for cars that are available in your price range and then looking in the Turo app to figure out what those cars are renting for. To do this, you're gonna go into guest mode on the Turo app and act like a guest who's looking to book a car. When I do my research, I like to look about 6 months out and see what cars are available from Thursday to Monday for a weekend trip. Then I go back and do the same thing for Thursday through Thursday or Thursday through Friday and see what kind of discounts these hosts are offering for a 1-week trip. The reason why I look 6 months out and not 2 weeks out is because not all cars are going to show up for 2 weeks out. They might already have trips on them. You're going to get your most accurate count looking 6 months ahead. And keep in mind, just because they're asking $70 a day 6 months from now doesn't actually mean that's what they're getting. Once you do that research of looking 6 months ahead, you want to keep a close eye on how those cars are performing now. If they're asking $70 a day 6 months from now, you want to see if that car's available this weekend and how much they're asking for it this weekend, because they may have actually lowered their price because the car wasn't renting. If it's not available this weekend, you're going to check the next weekend. If it's not available next weekend, you want to check the weekend after that. And if it's not rented, you want to check every single day for price drops and track how much they're actually getting. You also want to be aware of any holidays that are coming up that may impact the price. You might not want to do this research on Memorial Day weekend or Thanksgiving weekend because you're going to get a false sense of what prices actually are because they're probably going to be higher than normal. Also take note of the season. In most markets, January and February are really slow. So hosts aren't actually getting as much in January and February as they would be in like May or June. Prices of rental cars are not consistent. Every area has different seasonality. So just because somebody's able to get $60 a day in June, that doesn't mean that that's actually what they're getting in January. So you'll also want to research your market to see when peak season is and when major things are going on that may or may not impact price. So now that we've identified what price range we want to be in and the kinds of cars that are going to work well in our market, step 3 is to find that car and negotiate the best deal. It's really important not to overpay for cars. Overpaying for cars is one of the biggest avoidable mistakes that new hosts make. You really have to take the time to find and negotiate the best deal. Don't get so excited to buy your first Turo car that you're just willing to pay for it at whatever price they're asking. Because if you do overpay for a car, you're going to be renting that out for a while, months, to make up for what you overpay for. And really, guys, a lot of seasoned, experienced hosts, their whole strategy is to buy cars in which they get good deals on, no matter what it is. They do it this way in case something happens to that car, they're not upside down on it right out the gate. That takes a lot of time and a lot of patience. But once you have found the car at a good price, you want to make sure you do a few things before you buy. Number 1, scan the VIN into the Turo app to make sure it's eligible. Number 2, check for recalls. Number 3, check the tires. You can't rent a car on Turo if the tread is less than 430 seconds, but yet dealerships will still sell the car at 430 seconds because state minimum in most places is 230 seconds. So if the tread on the tires is low and you have to replace them soon, that's something you absolutely have to take into consideration when buying that car. We once found a deal on the car, but the tires were already at 430 seconds, so since we knew we would have to replace the car soon, it was no longer such a great deal. Number 4, if you don't know a lot about cars, take the car to a trusted mechanic. It would be a disaster if you purchased a car that needed major repairs right out the gate. I'm curious what your strategy is. Drop a comment and let me know.